Welcome to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere, Inc., a company based in Florida. Hosted by Michael John Sullivan, this is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Now, here is Michael John Sullivan.
Welcome to Magical Books for Kids. I'm Michael John Sullivan. Thank you for joining us for another podcast. Our special guest is Lesley Gibbs. She is an internationally published children's author, primary school teacher, and a presenter at the Australian Writers' Centre in Sydney, Australia. Her credits include the CBCA Early Childhood Book of the Year Honor Book, Scary Night, the CBCA Notable Book, Little Bear's First Sleep, Bring a Duck, Quick as a Wink, Fairly Pink, Fluke, Bouncing, Little Joey's, and the hilarious CBCA Notable Book Series Fizz, illustrated by Stephen Michael King. While teaching, Lesley met and married her husband and shared a passion in the art of ballroom dancing. One of the highlights of her dancing career was performing at the closing ceremony of the 2000 Sydney Olympics. She actively started writing in 2011. Lesley, thank you for joining us all the way from Australia. It's an honor to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, when I read your bio, I was very impressed that you actually danced at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. Walk us through how this happened and what did you feel? And that must have been so emotional for you to do that.
Oh, it was an amazing experience. I've been a competitive ballroom dancer with my husband for many years, and anyone who was at a certain standard of dancing received a letter, invited them if they would like to be a performer in this particular segment, which needed ballroom dancers. So I was absolutely delighted. So I said, absolutely yes. There was a lot of practicing involved, but it was absolutely worth it. It was absolutely fantastic to go and perform in the big arena with lots of huge props. We had giant Cupid dolls which followed us around. We danced to Love Is in the Air by John Paul Young. When we did the rehearsals, I was able to meet a lot of celebrities as well, like Kylie Minogue and some other more Australian-based celebrities who were also performing in that closing ceremony. But it was an absolute thrill. I mean, that went to millions of people worldwide, and so it was just a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
So we could have been watching you back in 2000, you and your husband dancing along and everything like that. So that's
right. And I can actually find myself in the footage, and there's a close-up of us. We're really lucky.
Oh, so you got that. So that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So that's something that you share with your kids as well, with
Yes.
that happening. Yes, that's wonderful. Was there anything in particular that struck you as far as the 2000 Olympics? Because obviously you were actively involved. Was there anything? Yeah.
Oh, I think what struck me is how all of Sydney came together for the Olympics. I think we had the most volunteers that we've ever had at Olympics before. So my father volunteered to be a driver, and he drove around dignitaries to different places. But yeah, we all just came together and made sure that all of the visitors who came to Australia had a really good time. And, understood where to go and what to see. And it was a really wonderful time in Sydney when we were also proud of being Australian, proud of the Olympics, and everyone wanted to be a great host.
Yes, it was wonderful watching that, and the ceremony was beautiful and everything. So I'm sure that this is a memory you'll carry for a lifetime. Now, yeah. You said that you just started writing basically in 2011. What inspired you to start in 2011?
Well, I think it was always a seed in my mind that I might be able to write. I didn't know whether I actually could, but I went into teaching. And I think when you become a primary school teacher, that just, you're not left with much time on your hands. You're really, really busy, and you're very, very tired, and there was really no extra time for me to think about writing. Also, teaching was extremely creative, so all of those creative urges were sort of satisfied doing teaching. But around the 2011, it's just before that, I had stopped teaching and had my 2 children. And I found now that I was at home and I was looking after my children, that I had the time. And I wanted to do something just for me. And I had no contacts. I didn't really know how to go about doing this. So I got on and Googled, and I found the Australian Writers Centre and Writing New South Wales. And I went off and I did lots and lots of courses. And then I had to be really brave and actually write and submit work. And so, of course, I did receive lots of rejections and still do. But I managed to get my first book, which was Scary Night, picked up out of an enormous slush pile. And I was really lucky because that became a Children's Book Council honour book, which is second place for Book of the Year for early childhood. And so I was sort of launched into the spotlight. So then I got very nervous and I thought, well, I now have to write other books. I don't want to be a one-hit wonder. And so I got straight down to work and started writing more books, and I've had a lot of more publications since then. And so I now have 14 books now published for children. So mostly picture books, poetry anthologies, some of it's non-fiction as well, and a chapter book series for children, sort of 5 to 9 years of age. And that particular series, the Fizz series, is available in America through Kane Miller and the Osborne and Moore sellers.
So that's wonderful. You basically are around the world. Your books are around the world, which is wonderful. You mentioned rejection. Every author or aspiring author has to truly get used to that. And then, of course, there's the book reviews. And of course, I've always said this, reading is a subjective experience. You can get 2 totally opposite viewpoints on someone reading your book. So how did you adjust to that, having your work in the public? Because our work is basically on display for anybody to write whatever they wish about our work. And so sometimes that's hard to get used to. It took me a little bit to get used to, but how did you deal with it?
Well, I think when it comes to reviews, where a blogger might do it or so on, I think if they don't like your book, they just don't review it. And I think that's a nice system. So when they do review it, it's because they do like it and they have positive things to say about it. But I think it's when your book is on Amazon and other online booksellers, and then absolutely anybody in the public can rank it and talk about it. And so mostly, it's their children's books, and they're not they don't have a strong opinion on things that might cause people to not like them. So generally they're nice things, but sometimes people perhaps just didn't get the book or understand it properly, and they've made a comment that really doesn't make sense. But it's water off a duck's back. You just have to ignore that.
That's true. When I first wrote my first novel, it was actually picked up by Simon & Schuster. And when the reviews came out, 19 out of 20 are wonderful, but it's the one that's not so great that you focus on for weeks upon weeks. And I finally got over that after my second book. I said, you know what? I think this is a great book. I don't care what anybody says about it. So I think sometimes we have to have that type of attitude.
Yes, but I think if you've got 19 that are good and one that isn't, if someone's just going onto Amazon and they're looking at those reviews and they see that, I think they just discard that one because they can see that most people have enjoyed it. So
Goodreads is a little bit tougher. I don't know if you ever had books reviewed on Goodreads. Those people.
Oh, I have, and yeah, you're right. They are tough, and so I have had some mostly good, but then there's a little twist at the end or something with something they didn't like. And with my book Searching for Cicadas, I think it was something about one of the pages being a little dark, and I have to agree with them on that. But it's still, when it's a review like Goodreads, and a lot of people read it, and you want it to be perfect, don't you? What they say to be really good. So yeah, it does hurt. And we do read all those reviews. So if you leave a comment somewhere, the authors do see them and do read them. And if they're too nasty, it does hurt.
Sure. But I get to the point where I said, you know what? When I wrote my second novel, I loved the way it was written and everything. It didn't matter what anybody else said at that point. So I basically came like a 360 on this as well. Now you mentioned Yeah, you mentioned the notable book series. I was looking at your books, Fizz, the series Fizz. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah, well, the Fizz books were inspired by my dogs, because the Fizz books, the main character is a dog. And Fizz's heart's desire is, now that he's all grown up and finding a job, his heart's desire is to be a police dog. That's absolutely what he wants to do. Except there's one small problem. Police dogs are sort of big and buff like a German Shepherd, and well, Fizz is small and white and fluffy. So you can see the problem, and that lends itself to a lot of humour for Fizz. He is not supported by his family. No one in his family has ever been a working dog before. They have been companion dogs, or his sister is a handbag dog for a famous actress, and his mum and dad are show dogs. So they really are worried about Fizz becoming a police dog, but it's an absolute heart's desire. So he does go off to the Sunnyvale City police dog tryouts. And there he meets Amadeus, who is our antagonist of the story, and he's a wonderful bully. And he sabotages Fizz at every turn during the police dog tryouts. Now, there are 4 books in the series, so I guess the readers kind of know, well, Fizz must make it as a police dog. And I didn't want that the ending to be too predictable, so I had to put a twist at the end. So no, Fizz doesn't become a police dog.
Oh.
But I won't tell you what he does become, because you'll have to read it. But it's, you know, we sort of talk about the 3 different endings a book can have. Either your character gets exactly what they want, that would be Fizz becomes a police dog, or they don't get what they want, Fizz fails, and we wouldn't do that in a children's book. That's not very nice. Or the 3rd ending, which I chose, and that is that your main character fails to get what they want, but they get something equally as good, if not better. So I think Fizz becomes something even better. And he does go on.
Yes, I need Fizz to do well, you know. And I saw a picture of you on your website, and it shows you holding 2 dogs. And now, what type of dogs are they, and how old are they?
Jack Russell Terriers, and they were the inspiration for Fizz, because Jack Russell Terriers are clever, and they're brave, and they're super fast, and they sort of don't realise that they're a little dog. So you take them to the dog park, and they go up to the biggest dog there and start barking at them, not realising this huge dog could just eat them up in one gulp. So I love the heart that they have. So they inspired it. Now, it was Cosworth and Portia, but they have now both passed away. Cosy at 13 years of age, and Portia was 16 years of age, just after Christmas last year. So he's asleep at the moment behind me in the dog bed, but I now have a tiny little 12-week-old Jack Russell Terrier called Arnie. So I'm going to have to come up with a story for Arnie, I think.
I think so too, right? Yeah, they'd be inspired by it. I mean, our first dog was named Little Brother. We named him after the dog in Mulan, the Disney animated film Mulan, and he was with us for 11 and a half years. It was the first pet I had, and when he passed, I mean, I was devastated. It was it's something that if you have to have a dog that gives you that unconditional love every day. No matter what, no matter how bad the dog felt, or how bad your day was, the dog was there waiting for you to embrace you and to make sure that you gave it food and a belly rub too as well.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. And I think when you're a writer too, and you're alone a lot, that dog gives you a lot of company. And my dogs would always, you know, sit at my feet while I'm writing. So when, you know, the 2 dogs passed away, it was devastating. And then I sort of had this year of being a very lonely time, I think, without having a dog. So I'm delighted with my family, my 2 children, who are 11 and 12.
Wow.
Thoroughly enjoying a new little puppy.
That's beautiful. And some of the titles I'm really intrigued by. Scary Night. Now, what is that? What's the storyline regarding that?
Okay, Scary Night is for very young children, for preschoolers, and there are 3 characters: Hare with a hat, Cat with a cake, and Pig with a parcel. You can tell I'm a primary school teacher. That's for the phonetics for younger kids. And they're going on a journey in the dead of the night. and they go past crocodiles and across a river where there are crocodiles. They meet bears. It's all very scary, but they never, ever give up. And where they're going is a surprise. So I'll read you a tiny little bit so you can get a taste of the language in it.
Beautiful. That's great.
Once upon a scary night, 3 friends set out on a journey. Hare with a hat, cat with a cake, pig with a parcel. But where were they going in the dead of the night? Tiptoe creeping in the pale moonlight. It was a mystery. And then there's a nice little section that I put in where there's question and answer in the book, which is a great thing to do for kids. Were they scared? You bet they were. Did they shake? You bet they did. Did they give up? Oh, of course they didn't. On they went, hare with a hat, cat with a cake, pig with a parcel. And so all through the book, you don't know where they're going. And they have to go over all these obstacles, but they never, ever give up. And because it's a children's book, of course, there had to be something really lovely. And I'm holding up a picture for you, but your listeners can't see.
The illustrations are beautiful.
It is. They're going to Goat's birthday party.
Right.
So isn't Goat lucky having friends like that? We go over all those obstacles just to say happy birthday. And of course, the hare with a hat. The hat is a party hat. Cat with a cake. It was a birthday cake. And pig with a parcel. It was a present for Goat. So that you find out what the things were that they were holding, why they were taking them. And so this book's actually used in the Victorian curriculum here in Australia and studied at university for primary school and early childhood teachers. So having that education background, I was absolutely thrilled that the book was being used that way.
Yeah, and the questions, they're very clever. It's very clever to put them in there. And of course, when you're a young child, you're scared of the night and the darkness as well. So it actually helps the children, feel a little bit more comfortable and understand what's going on. So that's a terrific idea. And I must say the illustrations are beautiful too as well.
They're by Stephen Michael King, who is a very famous international Australian author and illustrator. So, and I, being a teacher, I had read many of his books that he had written and many that he had illustrated. So to find out that he was going to illustrate my very first picture book was an amazing moment and quite surreal. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. And I see from the titles and everything that they're always engaging with an animal. Little Bear's First Sleep, Bring a Duck.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, bouncing little Joeys.
Yeah, that's a Christmas book.
Yeah, is that okay? As far as Little Bear's First Sleep, what's that? The plot line on that?
So Little Bear's First Sleep. So it's his first long winter hibernation. Although bears don't technically have a hibernation, they do something a little different. But so Little Bear is on his way back to his cave with his parents. He runs, he falls behind because he's interested in all things around him. When he gets to his cave, Mum and Dad have already started their long hibernation. And he has to put himself to sleep for the very first time. So he's seeing all the little things that Little Bear does, counts his toes and sings a song just like his father would and all sorts of things. And eventually he does get himself off to sleep. And then when spring comes, he's the very first to wake and skip outside into the lovely spring sunshine. So it's a bedtime book.
Yeah, I think it's a bedtime book, even for adults. I can tell you during this pandemic here, a lot of nights you go sleepless and everything, and you're trying to find a way to put yourself to sleep. So that's certainly a great book for adults and children to read together. What about Bring a Duck? Now, what's that title?
Well, Bring a Duck, that's quite a funny one. It's another one that's in rhyme, sort of part in rhyme, part not. I love birthdays. I've always loved birthdays, making birthday cakes and celebrating. So Bring a Duck is a twist on a birthday party. Now, with my children, I've always done a themed birthday party. A lot of them have been, Barbie or Star Wars, things like that. So this birthday party is a duck-themed birthday party. So a bear receives a letter from Pig, and it says, birthday party at my place today. Bring your own duck. So Bear is extremely sort of curious. What's this birthday party going to be like? He managed to he gets himself a little duck, and off he goes to this duck-themed birthday party where there's just all sorts of wonderful duck-themed things that you can do at this party, including an enormous duck-themed birthday cake. So it's just loads and loads of fun, all about birthdays.
And bouncing, little Joey's. Now, of course, there's the Australian bent that
Yes.
we
Yes.
look for. You know, we hear about, we imagine Australia as this beautiful, vast land with all these animals, kangaroos going around,
Well, there
crocodiles.
are out the country area, although sometimes, I mean, occasionally we get a kangaroo that finds its way onto the Harbour Bridge, which one did earlier this year. So weird things do happen where the kangaroos do come into city areas. Sydney is, you know, really interesting city because we have these huge pockets of natural bush that come right up close to the city areas. So we do get a lot of wildlife, and occasionally we do get a kangaroo somewhere where it shouldn't be. But Bouncing Little Joey's at Bush Christmas is an Australian themed Christmas. So the little Joeys are preparing for Santa's arrival, and we see them doing all the things that our children love to do, making cards and preparing biscuits to put out for Santa and decorating the tree and all those sorts of things. And then they you know, fall asleep, and the next morning they wake up and Santa's been in there, a presents for them. So it's quite a simple but lovely you know, Christmas tale for really little preschoolers on Christmas night.
Yeah, it's wonderful because, you know, I mean, when I think of Australia, I think of Paul Hogan. I think at the actor Paul Hogan. I think of the crocodile, you know, hunter.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't been in Australia for a long time now, but yes.
Yeah, he passed away from that horrible accident, you know, when he was speared by
no,
fish.
that's not Paul Hogan. That is
Oh no, not Paul Hogan, but the other guy.
Steve.
Right.
Steve. What's his surname? What can I
I'll think of it.
Irwin. Steve Irwin.
No, yeah, it was.
How can I forget Steve Irwin?
Yes,
Steve.
His name is. Yeah. Crocodile was Paul Hogan, and the poor man that passed, you know, from getting speared, I guess, in the heart.
Right. That was absolutely shocking, and we were devastated. You just couldn't feel that somebody who had so much spirit, so much life in them, could be taken. It was extraordinary.
Steve Irwin, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And his daughter's just married and she's about to have a baby. That's Bindi. So we're all waiting for Bindi's lovely little baby to arrive.
Yeah, beautiful family they have and everything. But yeah, it actually inspired me and my partner. We actually wrote a book about this lizard who lived in Australia. You know, it was a rhyming book, The Lizard Who Loves a Blizzard. He always wanted snow on Christmas Day, you know, so he willed it, you know, and of course the magic of books, right? Like your books, you know, we can imagine and do anything we wish and create like that. So is there, I know I saw that you've been inspired by Dr. Seuss as well, and you do rhyming with your books.
Yes.
Is it hard to rhyme, or is it easier to write the other way without the rhyming?
Oh, look, I really love writing poetry and I love writing in rhyme, but there are lots of challenges when you do write in rhyme. You don't ever want to sacrifice the story just to find a word that rhymes. So you have to, you know, choose your story very carefully, what you're going to write about. So often I'll start by doing a brainstorming. Like if it was Bouncing Little Joeys and Christmas, I just brainstorm lots of Christmas words. Are there enough words there that I can rhyme with to make a story? You know, and if it's a story about an orange or the colour purple, you're going to have trouble finding words that rhyme with it. So yeah, I do a lot of brainstorming, but it's just like, for me, it's like solving a puzzle. It's a real challenge, and I absolutely adore doing it. I've got one coming out for Father's Day called Dinosaur Dads that's coming out this year, and that's all in rhyme. And it took me quite a while to get that right. It was coming out and sounding really corny, which things in rhyme can sound corny, particularly if it's got the same rhythm to it. It can get a bit sing-songy and feel corny, so I had to work on that a lot. And then all of a sudden it came together. So often I try to find, rhythm is really, really important to me, and I will find a rhythm that suits. So with Scary Night, when the characters are going on that journey, it's a sort of a marching rhythm to it. But, you know, other things, I've got lots of poems in this poetry anthology, Abode of Stars, and I'll read you a little bit one here for I Love Dogs, and you can hear that there's a completely different rhythm. This is a rhythm that's appropriate to bouncing dogs.
Okay.
I love dogs. I love dogs, playful and fizzy, frisky and lively, active and busy, dogs that are barky, dogs that are scary. I love dogs that are scruffy and hairy. And so it goes on. But you can hear that bouncy, bouncy, bouncy bounce through it, which is most appropriate for a dog. So I do try to find a rhythm that's appropriate to the subject that I'm talking about. That's really important. The other thing with rhyme is that when you say it, you can make it sound the way you want someone to read it, but you don't have control over the reader and how they're going to read the book. So it has to be written very carefully, and it's the language and the placement of the words that are going to control how the person reads that story. I remember I was in a library once, and our mother had picked up Scary Night, and there's a lot of rhyme in that, although not all rhyme. And she was reading it, and when she was reading it, she was leaving out the word "ah" in one of the repeated sentences. And I was just tensing up, going, when you leave that word "ah" out, it actually throws out the rhythm of that entire line. I had to sit there very silently listening to her dropping this one word every time.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
So,
one letter.
You can't control how people are going to read your stories.
Yeah, but I do love the idea that Father's Day, I mean, it's dinosaurs, and I'm sure that you'll have a lot of boys, especially,
Yes,
who love dinosaurs and everything. So that's
they go off and do all these cool dinosaur things, mud fights and big hide and seek and chases and all sorts of things. There's lots and lots of fun. But then it ends with the dinosaur dads are just exhausted and they're asleep, and the dinosaur kids are whinging. And then then it says, watch out, here come the mums. That's how it ends. So that's for the publisher. Please, can I do a dinosaur mums one for Mother's Day?
The other title that really struck me as very interesting was "Quick as a Wink, Fairly Pink." Now, pink. Okay,
and it has a blue cover.
It's very beautiful. It's beautiful, the cover and everything.
This book it's a bedtime story. So of course, if you're writing a bedtime story, your main characters have to be asleep at the end of the story. But with "Quick as a Wink, Fairy Pink," the little flutter fairies are going off to bed, but little Fairy Pink is not cooperating, and she's hiding. And so, quick as a wink, find Fairy Pink. I'm asking the reader to find Fairy Pink in the illustration. So I'll read you a tiny bit. 5 little flutter fairies going off to bed, fairy blue, fairy green, fairy gold, and red. But one of them is hiding. Which fairy do you think? Could it be the smallest one? Yes, it's Fairy Pink. And so we go on. We see them doing things that you would do at bedtime. Fairy blue is brushing her teeth. Fairy brush, fairy paste, fairy teeth so white, fairy floss, fairy rinse, fairy smile so bright. Now my teeth shine like new. It's time for bed, says Fairy blue. And then we go on with, but where is Fairy Pink? And so on. So it's lots of fun finding Fairy Pink in all the illustrations.
Well, the titles and the illustrations are just beautiful and everything. And readers, I guess, here in America can certainly get your stuff on Amazon, right? Amazon.com. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they can always find your materials and everything. So that's wonderful. Is there a particular story that you haven't written, but you truly, really want to write?
Well, there is, and it's, so I do like writing non-fiction as well in picture book format. And being a teacher, I really like the picture books that are for older children. So one of the picture books I'd like to write is actually about a war. And it's about when war came to Sydney Harbour. And so a lot of people don't know, certainly people within Australia don't know, is that the war in World War II did come right into Sydney Harbour. We had 3 Japanese midget submarines that made it through the submarine, anti-submarine nets, came right into Sydney Harbour, let off a torpedo and actually blew up a ship, the Catapult, which was a sleeping quarters for sailors. And American sailors died. I think 28 sailors lost their lives. We had an American warship in the harbour at the time, and they were trying to target that American warship, which was the USS Chicago, was in the harbour. So, and my family remember that. My parents, my auntie was working in a hospital on the night that happened, and she had to get all her patients down to the basement.
Wow.
My mother was much younger than her sister, and they had a bunker in the backyard that was dark, and all of the air raid sirens went off through Sydney, through the harbour suburbs, and she had to be raced down to the bunker and wait there till the all clear came. Except her mother said, "You're not allowed to come into the bunker until you find your socks. You're not coming down without your socks."
Oh my goodness.
My mother never found her socks, so she never made it down to the bunker.
Those socks, they find a way to get to travel somewhere, don't they? Those socks.
So it's a sort of a story that I would need to tell very delicately, but I think it's because it's sort of almost a bit of lost history. And I like to tell that in a way that children could understand. Just to keep that little piece of history alive. So that's something that I would like to write. Whether I'll be able to, get that done.
It sounds like a fascinating story, yeah, and it's a personal experience for you too, as well. So so the book will probably come across great. So thank you so much for joining us on Magical Books for Kids. They can find your books. I'm going to spell the name out for everybody, so you can Google her name, and there's a lot of information about you and where they can find your books. It's Lesley, Lesley, Gibbs, Gibbes. And I found your books very fascinating, and I hope the people here in America. And thank you for joining us all the way around the other side of the world from Australia. It's been an honor to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's certainly people read. Lesley Gibbs, thank you again. And join us next week for another edition of Magical Books for Kids. I'm Michael John Sullivan. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere INC, a company based in Florida, hosted by Michael John Sullivan. This is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Join us for another fun storytelling podcast next week.